Tonight, we continue to examine the fine details of the proposed 2022 budget of the federal government of Nigeria. A focus is on the budget of the Ministry of Works and Housing. Data and information consultant Babajide Ogunsanwo is our guide as always. Babajide, great to have you here.
Good evening, Amachi.
Oh, good evening. It's Orange today. Now, in the last 3 weeks, you have been discussing, the budgets for the Ministry of Health. You talked about the one for defense and then education. Now we're looking at works and housing. What's unique about this one?
Lots of unique things. I'd like to start with reminding you that what we've seen with this works on housing budget is that every solution to a problem in Nigeria raises new problems. And why do I say so? I'd like us to take a look at the top 7 priorities of the government, because in front of the top 7 priorities allows us to know what the government will be focusing on in its last full year budget. This is the last full year budget the government has. And why we call this the top 7 priorities is that excluding monies that will go for debt repayment, excluding money that will go for statutory transfers, these top 7 ministries account for 40% of all government's planned spending for next year. So these 7 ministries, 4.5 trillion naira budget. We've talked about education, we've talked about defense, we've talked about health. Every solution to a problem raises new unsolved problems. So what do I mean? Defense now is being budgeted in trillions of naira. The implication is that education, health, works and housing now has less money available to be spent. But tonight, here's the interesting thing. Works and housing, 481 billion naira. Part of the top 7 ministries, and those are part of the top 7 things that the government wants Nigerians to judge them on as it implements its full year budget. So it'll be interesting to see how much of this money is appropriated and how much eventually is released for works to be carried out.
Well, it doesn't seem that that will be enough. The Minister for Works and Housing says that the country needs trillions of naira, not the billions that have been budgeted, though. So you've done some research on this. What have you seen?
So yes, he's right. The country needs trillions of naira. But tonight, if we're to use works and housing and power, in 2016, these 3 units were under the minister then, Babatunde Fashola. If we're to use works, housing, and power as a proxy, here's what you'll notice. There's some good news and there's bad news. The good news is, yes, we've seen the largest works and housing and power budget, 783 billion naira. That's the good news. There's even more good news. For housing this year, we have 26 billion naira planned for housing. And also we've seen these ministries make adequate provisions for their multilateral projects, especially Abuja to Kefi, Akwanji, and Lafia. So that is the good news. Here is the bad news, Amarachi. First, in 2022, the proposed budget for the Ministry of Works, Housing, and Power, that is 783 billion, but that is only 5% of the total budget. Let's look at the budget of 2018. Even though the 2018 budget was 715 billion, it was 8% of the total budget. In other words, yes, we see more money allocated to infrastructure, but in relative terms, based on the size of the budget, it's less money. The second bad news, Amachi, is that in 2018, Works, Power and Housing had a budget of 715 billion naira. But the fact based on inflation shows that what 715 billion naira will buy you in 2018 is more than what 783 billion naira would buy you. So in real terms, the 2018 budget of 715 billion naira has more value for money compared to that 783 billion naira proposed for works, housing, and power next year.
And did anything change, with the splitting of the ministry itself? Power used to be power, works and housing, but now it's power on its own, and then you have works and housing.
So, that question, I think that should be for Nigerians to ask. And that's why I also believe that when ministries are creating their budgets, they need to have not just zero-based or whatever type of budget, they need to have fact-based budgets. And by fact-based budgets, we're saying ministries need to do more surveys. They need to ask citizens questions on what are the challenges they face and how do citizens rate and rank their performance. Until we start having fact-based budgets, we'll keep having these issues whereby we see budgets having some duplicated roles and we not being able to really know what exactly is going on. That is one. The second is if we're to disaggregate these budgets, looking at works and housing and looking at power, you'll see that nothing significant has changed in numerical terms. So let's take a look at the disaggregated budget of works, housing, and power. And if we're able to focus on it, here's what you will notice. In 2020, when that split happened, works and housing had a budget of 280 billion naira. The 2022 budget for works and housing now is 482 billion naira. So in 2 years, we've seen the works and housing budget grow by approximately 200 billion naira. Power has moved from 133 billion naira in 2020 to 301 billion naira, so about 170 billion naira. In all, we've seen the combination of works, housing, and power move from a budget of 413 billion naira in 2020 to 783 billion naira, what it is today. So summary is, in terms of the split of money to works, power, and housing, the priority has still been on works and housing, but the growth of additional funds has been pretty much the same. But again, let's not forget, just like the minister said, Minister of Works and Housing, that is not just the budget, Amarachi. It is how much money is released to back the budget. And based on even his own statements, he said that this year, the 2021 budget, just approximately half of all what was budgeted in 2021 has been released. So we don't no longer just need budgets, Amarachi. We need money-backed budgets. And that's just what it is. Remember how we started?
Yeah.
Every solution to a problem in Nigeria raises new problems.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the minister's words are quite true for other ministries as well. Thank you so much, Babajide.
We'll continue next week.
Of course.